if you look at these incidents across the board, going back very far, right? We're not just talking about here in 2025, but going back even to the University of Texas clock tower.
1966.
66, 68, somewhere there. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Charles. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, right? So those have been happening for maybe even since before then, right? But I can just use that kind of as a reference point going forward, right? Is that memory serves, he was a soldier, right? And then you have other crimes that have been carried out by people who may have had weapons illegally or may have had weapons legally, right? I don't know that it's fair to say that it's just because of guns or that it's better or worse because of guns, right? I'm sure that maybe there's some component to it, but I think there's something to be said about the people who carry out those crimes too, right? So yes, the guns, maybe it's the means by which, and maybe it makes it worse because of the firepower, right? Where you have a rifle versus a knife, right? But we saw that here in 2015. We had somebody attempted to kill at least 4 people with a knife on this campus, right? He didn't even have a firearm. So somebody who's committed to what they're going to try to do, they're going to try to do it anyway, right? But to your point of whether it's guns make it better or worse, maybe, but I think there's also another component of what about the person doing it? The person doing it, I think that there are things that were happening leading up to that moment. I don't think it was just I'm going to go do this today, right? Maybe that's a huge assumption, but there's, I think a lot of these you can look back at their background leading up to it, whether it be things that were happening in their lives, mental health, substance abuse, all kinds of other things that are going on, things that the circumstances that made them think like this is like I have to do this for whatever reason, whether it's gives them a feeling of some kind of sick feeling of accomplishment, or they feel like they have been wronged, or just for some other sadistic reason, right? Like look at some of these things that you think about, like it doesn't make sense, right? Whether it was a gun or not, right? Columbine High School, right? That doesn't, but they did what they did, right? They shot kids who were hiding under desks, right? Aurora, Colorado, right? You know what they were doing?
Yes, 2012.
Yeah, what were they doing? You remember what they were doing?
They were going inside classrooms and shooting them.
No, Aurora was a movie.
Movie?
Remember what movie?
Was it a spy movie?
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises. Remember the third Dark Knight movie?
Yes, the Joker.
No, it was a 2012 because remember it was Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises. So you remember it was the third one. It was the premiere at that theater in Colorado. I want to say it was like one of those like midnight premieres, right? It's like people were going to watch a movie, right? So, and yes, he used guns and he had diversionary devices and smoke and all these other things, right? Which, yeah, that gave him the means to do that, right? But the person who was the human being made that decision. But that decision came from all kinds of other things that were going on. So I think that we need to look at more than just like the guns or the things that they use, right? What else is wrong with us as a society that those things can continue to happen that way, right? I mean, I can probably name a whole lot of others, right? But does that answer your question adequately?
Okay. And in your opinion, what are the most effective ways to prevent these mass shootings? Like, would you believe it's like stopping them before, like helping them with the mental issues, or would you, is there something else?
I don't know, but I think that kind of goes along with the last question, and maybe I can go ahead and kind of continue along those lines. Is that there are gun laws in place, and that people follow those gun laws, right? There's a lot of people who follow lots of laws, right? And then you never hear anything from them. I would say a vast majority of people, for the most part, are good people and follow laws, whether it's a gun law or driving law or whatever law there is, right? It's just when you have people who are committed to doing this, right? And many of them may follow laws, whether it be like purchasing firearms or purchasing ammunition, whatever else it is, right? But there's just something there's something that gets missed, right? There's all kinds of ways for something to get missed, because maybe it's some kind of, whether it be a mental health or something that happened to somebody or something that's going on right now, it's not become apparent somewhere, right? So, without, it's hard, because people have a right to have a gun, as long as they're not like convicted felons and things like that. And you can own a gun, you can go buy a gun, right? But who's to say that that person that can legally buy a gun isn't gonna? I don't know. We can do a lot of background checks and things, and checking on people and those things, right? I don't know that I necessarily know what that answer is, right? But I do know that when I remember one day something happened with my son at school one day. It wasn't a bad thing. It ended up he got through it. But it was in the middle of an active shooter drill where they had to lock down the room, they had to lock the doors, they had to basically basically barricade the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where we're at in 2025. Is that I don't know. I will cheer the day when there are no more active shooters, when it's a thing in the past, when people don't have to take trainings where they have to learn how to barricade the door with door wedges and belts, and throw tables and chairs in front of the doors and pick up a fire extinguisher or a hot cup of coffee and a stapler and defend themselves, right? But I think that with that still out there, that's where we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's an easy way to say, hey, we're going to prevent this, right? Because it's so prevalent now that and they happen, whether it be a school, a workplace, a public event, right? You know what happened in Gilroy a few years ago?
Gilroy, here, California, or
Gilroy, California.
was it a festival?
It was a garlic festival, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he got in. If I could be wrong, you can look it up, but I want to say that one got in through a whole offense or something, right? And it's just an event where families go, and they they go and they get food, and they go to vendors, and they just go and have a good time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't even do one of those without something happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so then it comes down to like when we have events, we have a certain level of security, like big events like commencement and those things, right? Concerts that we have on campus, we warn people, we do metal detectors and do things like that, right? I wish we didn't have to do that. I wish prevention can be at the point where, well before somebody even contemplated even having to go buy or obtain a gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not there yet.
Because for a question I have like that, so why do you think the United States has significantly more mass shootings than other countries? And I want to say this because in other countries in Europe, Switzerland, Iceland, they have per capita they have more guns than they have people, but they don't have as many. They don't even have many mass shootings.
And that's another good question that and I'm not sure. But maybe some of the things that you might want to look at are what other kind of things do they have to when people buy guns in those communities. Right?
They make these people take tests. Like tests,
Mm-hmm.
they make them like so they can renew their license like basically every
Mm-hmm.
couple years.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then another one is that per capita you may have people who have more guns legally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I would say, and like I said, I don't actually know, but maybe another thing to look at too is that how many people per capita actually have guns not legally as well too, because there's a lot of people. I'd venture to say there's lots of people in, especially amongst the criminal element like hardcore gang members and things like that who have guns illegally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do they have that in European countries like what we see here in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't know, right? So I think there's a lot more to it than just they have more guns per capita, but we have more violence, right?
Mhm.
That tells me that there's something else that's going on here, whether it be mental health, could even be, you can even look at like socioeconomic, right? Regions, right? There's lots of other things that I think could be a factor. The one thing that it is, I don't know, because even amongst those things that I just said right now, you have a lot of folks that aren't into that.
Mhm.
But for the ones that do that, right, it can be very violent, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know why the numbers are the way they are, but I have read probably some of the same things that you have or something similar, and seen like news stories about even young kids learning to shoot in some of those countries that you kind of make reference to,
Mhm.
but there's not that same level of concern about are they going to be violent, right?
Mhm.
It could be, it could be another thing could be access too, right? When you combine the issues that people are having to easy access, right? But there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. And how do you think gun laws in California compare to other states, and what impact does that have in your work?
Well, in California, I do think it's a for most people, I think it's with the laws the way they are. I think you can still get a gun. There are certain guns. Good night. Sorry. There are certain guns that you're not going to be able to get, or you're not going to be able to get unless you're, say, like a law enforcement officer, or
Mhm.
you've been through some other things, right? So I think you can still get it. In other states, there are weapons that you can get that you can't get here,
Mhm.
right? So I think those are the differences, maybe in some of how the background checks are conducted, right? But as far as like how does it impact, you know, me or our department so much? I mean, the gun laws are what they are, right?
Mhm.
So I don't. It's hard to like for me to compare it to another state because we enforce the state's laws,
Mhm.
and so when we come across something that if there's something that it doesn't match what the law is, we deal with it. We deal with it appropriately, right? Like I said, gun crimes in or around this campus, I would say very, very low. And I've been here. I'm in the middle of my 18th year, right? So it doesn't come up a whole lot, right? So whether a law is more restrictive, less is restrictive, the law is a law, right?
Mhm.
So it's not really come up where um, because something is more or less stringent in another state that it's a problem or not a problem, right? It's not really been too much of an issue, but I can assure you that any gun crimes that occur on this campus will be dealt with very quickly, because we have a responsibility to protect everyone in this campus community, right? So whether it be a weapon, or whether even if it's some kind of a threat that has no weapon, no known weapon involved, but we still have to assume that could there be a weapon involved. That we take all those very seriously, the safety of the campus, the people on it, the staff, the students, the guests, and I have a responsibility to every person who works in this building to make sure that they're safe. That includes the chief.
Okay. And based on your experience, what's the most important thing the public should understand about balancing gun control with campus safety?
Say that to me one more time for me.
Based on your experience, what's the most important thing the public should understand about balancing gun control with campus safety?
Well, I think I have to go back to, unless you're a law enforcement officer,
Mhm.
you can't have one on campus anyway,
Mhm.
right? So even if you have a concealed weapon, it's permanent, right? Let's say you had, you're too young, but let's say you did, right?
Mhm.
You couldn't actually be here on campus legally
Mhm.
with that gun, right? So, gun control, um, some people have asked, like, can I get a concealed weapons permit, and should I own a gun at home, right? Like, I can't make those decisions for you, right? Like, you can own a gun. Like, if you're at your home, you can own one that's, as long as it's a gun that you can get here.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can own it, and that's a decision that you have to make. You want to get a concealed weapons permit? That's a decision that you have to make, right? But control, though, just I would just encourage you, as you're doing your research into this, that different sides of the issue are going to have different definitions of what gun control is, and what it should be, right? Where some people may say just outright, eliminate them, outright, right? Some may say no, everybody can own a gun, and people should be able to carry anything anywhere, right? And then you may have what's in the middle, right? In terms of campus safety, again, come back to you can't have one here anyway, right? So I think it's probably more appropriate to think about, well, but what about out there, right? I don't know that I don't know that there's really a good answer for that, because the laws are what they are, right? And then people are going to continue to have their opinions, but also remember too is that everything is tied to something else, right? That everybody has their beliefs, whether it be like a personally deeply held belief or whether it's part of some kind of interest that they have in something else too, right? No matter what side they're on, but also kind of keep that in mind, because you're going over history, so you're also going to learn a lot about like politics and the political process, right?
Yes.
You're dealing with gun laws, whether it be more or less restrictive. It's very, very political, very, very, very political, right? No matter what you do, and then there's a lot of businesses tied to firearms, right? Manufacturing, selling, whatever, right? So it's also, remember, it's also a business too, right? And people from all sides of any issue, they lobby their legislators to either get laws passed either for or against something, right? So, but as far as like gun laws and campus safety, again, the short answer is, despite having said all that, you can't have one here anyway, on any campus property, right? Unless they're like one of us.
All right. Thank you. That was the last question.